Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Red 5 Live. We are Red 5 Network, but I am Ro. Let me get to this. I always need like another set of hands here for this. And tonight I am joined by none other than our Red 5 Network family. How's it going, guys? Kev, Justice?
It's going
up?
great, man.
Excellent.
Having a lovely Thursday evening.
Oh, here's my lovely Thursday evening. Welcome.
Good man. Good man.
It has been water. Stay hydrated.
Water.
That's
yeah,
fine.
it's just staying hydrated over here.
I'll cancel you guys. No, but yeah, stay hydrated. But it has been a rough week, and I just want to say thank you guys for joining us in the chat. Cam, as usual, first in line. And Mr. Rez and Amanda, thanks for popping in. And we just got Michael over at 2Med2 Star Wars Network. Greetings, sports fans. I don't know what that means, but I guess there's a some sort of game going on tonight.
I think the Chiefs are
foosball.
Foosball?
Yeah.
Okay.
Foosball. The World Foosball Championships.
Awesome. And whatever that means.
I felt
I'm like just so not into sports, and I think my business partner makes fun of me because it was like, "What do you do on Sundays?" I'm like, "I don't know. I do what do non-sports people do on Sundays? What do you do on Sundays?" And he explains to me the whole, Sunday is the holy day of football or whatever sport, whatever season it's in. But that just is not me. I'm sorry. But how are you guys?
Tired. Tired, but stoked to be here. Stoked and ready to go.
Awesome. Yeah, I almost canceled it because not a lot of people were responding to our DMs. But I logged in to cancel, and I saw Kev, kind of like waiting, and I'm like, oh shit, all right, that's fine. Let's do this, man. Awesome.
Hooray for not having a life.
I got on an hour early, and I was like, oh, he meant 8:30 Central
Time. Yeah.
Yes.
Funny. Where are you located? Where are you at again?
Kind of Greenville, South Carolina.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Ro and I are in the same.
Yeah.
Same time.
Moving to
Same time zone.
Indiana in a couple weeks.
Oh, nice.
So.
Who's your daddy?
Yeah, like I told you earlier, man, like Justice and I have been talking all week, and I'm like, man, that's a ballsy move. I wish I had the balls to pick up and move out of state, man. But
we moved from Wisconsin to Greenville a year ago, and now we're moving back because she got a job. So,
yeah, you got to go where the money is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Especially now, man. It's families are, families are going through some shit, man.
Yeah. I work in pest control, and I service like apartments and residential homes and stuff. And I gone to a lot of apartments this month that had eviction notices on the door, and it was definitely one of those like, okay, no, this is a real thing that's happening. Yeah. More than what you would normally see. It's crazy, man. It's crazy.
Well, didn't the what agency was it that I guess this is no longer sports talk or Star Wars talk, but
hard pivot, man. Hard pivot.
Hard pivot. But anyways, let's get back to a little chit chat. It's been a rough week for Star Wars Twitter, and I know we were talking about it right before we went on the air, but it really has been a rough week with everything that has been going on, and obviously Twitter has given us given everybody a voice to speak out and say what is on your mind. Some people like it, other people don't, and it's been rough. What have been some of the more memorable things that have happened this week, according to you guys? Kev, what sticks out in your mind?
Oh man,
that's like shooting fish in a barrel, man.
Yeah, because it's kind of been like one thing after the other. You had the John Boyega interview, and
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, and there were so many, like there was a really encouraging through line with that, in the sense that like everybody seemed to throw their support behind John Boyega, which is the correct thing to do. But there was also the people that used his behind the scenes talk and how he felt about that as like justification for how they already feel about a certain thing. And we saw the same thing with the Daisy Ridley interview. You know, she was relaying her experience on set, and of course, again, it was used to kind of like, oh crap, it was used to kind of like reinforce someone's already held beliefs about it. But Amanda said the best thing were the Mandalorian photos, and I absolutely agree.
I agree too.
Those are cool.
Justice, what about you? What sticks in your mind as some of the more wacky things on Star Wars Twitter this week?
I honestly, I've been kind of off of Twitter this week just because of everything. I mean, you mentioned, well, basically the Mandalorian and the Daisy Ridley interview, and then the last one would be the John Boyega thing. But other than that, I've been really trying to get off Twitter just because it's been a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because it's you get the big stuff that happens, like Kev, you mentioned the fact that people kind of turn John Boyega and Daisy Ridley's news of their experience into something that supports their own narrative, which may be true, it may not be true, but there's also some other things that are happening too in the fandom that are kind of like, it's tiresome to say the least. Big shout out to Lauren Romo from the Galactic Podcast, and I always have to say it like that because that's how it's written. So, Lauren, how's it going? Thanks for
welcome,
joining
Lauren.
us. We're just kind of chit-chatting, talking about the dumpster fire that is Star Wars Twitter this week. We've had a lot of stuff come through, but so what else, guys? I've got one question, and then maybe we will throw it over to the chat to see what other topics people might want to discuss. But before I ask you that question, any other thoughts on Star Wars Twitter this week?
I mean, there was definitely a moment where I was just like literally exhausted by it, because I think, again, it gives everyone a platform, and it doesn't matter who you are, you've got that platform now. And I think I was most exhausted by the fact that everything is amplified due to everyone's emotional investment in this thing, or their emotional investment in their own narrative, like you mentioned, Ro. And I think I was exhausted by the amount of emotional investment I was seeing, because it's a lot to take in, because it can be so intense. Like when Star Wars Twitter is on fire, Justice said it best. It is a dumpster fire, and it's like a 4-alarm dumpster fire, and I was really trying my best this week to just like, okay, let's get off. Let's put it down. Let's go do something else for like 5 minutes and just see if I can get a break from it. But on the flip side of that, there's moments where it's like really good, right? When good news comes out and everyone's stoked and everyone's excited, like at those times, it's a pretty neat place to be, so I guess you take the good with the bad, and then that's the facts of life.
Oh, I love that show. So,
I'm clever like that.
Amanda says that the new Target merchandise was pretty cool too. I saw some of the items that were purchased by some lucky Star Wars Twitter fans, and when I see that stuff, right away I run over to my local Target or Walmart and see if I can get anything. But it's been kind of bare. I did pick up a couple of dark sabers. And we're going to be giving away a dark saber or two in the next coming weeks, and stay tuned for that assignment. But those are pretty cool. I think
nice.
Fred bought one. He found one, I think, at Walmart, and looked really nice. So can't wait to add it to my little wall here, and then maybe give one away. But
those look sick.
Yeah, they look pretty good.
I mean, as a rule, I try to stay out of Target, because Target for me is like a Vegas casino.
Oh, sure.
There's like no natural lighting, and you go in there and you're like, I'm going to hit one slot machine and I'm going to move on. And then it's like 3 hours later, you're $500 in the hole and you don't know where you are. Like Target does that to me. So I try to actively stay away from it because I know that my wallet is going to curse my name.
That's what happens when I go to that comic book store.
Yeah, that too. That too.
Yeah.
You're like, one issue, man. I got one issue I'm coming out of there with. And then it's like $30 later. It's a bag filling over, or a box even.
Yeah, the comic book store for me. I mean, in high school and college, I used to collect a lot of comic books, and I still have all of my books at mom's attic. But it's one of those things that I definitely can go into that rabbit hole and start buying comics. I I just can't. Same with some other things. I think as the Star Wars phenomenon grows and more characters and I guess more collectibles come out, I have to be a little bit more selective. But yeah, Matt Vader over at the Salty Nerd Podcast turned me on to those damn 40th anniversary Empire Strikes Back Funkos. So I'm ordering those, but they're nice, but I don't want to be a Funko collector because
Why not?
I just don't have the space or the patience or the money.
Yeah, I have one Funko, and it was one that my co-host Brad got me, and it's Korg from Thor Ragnarok because that's my favorite character in the entire MCU.
Yeah.
So that's the only one I own. Beyond that, I will not spend money on them. It's just not a thing that really does anything for me.
Yeah.
I have quite a bit.
I mean,
You do, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm only allowed to keep a couple out.
And I know.
Yeah.
So, there's some chatter in the what do you call it, in the chat, and I'm going to put up a couple of things, something that Lauren has said, Amanda has said, but it's some really good advice. And I think, we're talking about how Star Wars Twitter can become a dumpster fire. We also understand that sometimes, we bring in what we bring in, and that's what we get out of things. So there's a lot of times where, I'm scrolling through and I see something that, might, I don't know, piss me off or evoke some sort of emotion. And I know a lot of people have been tweeting the fact that they see something they don't agree with, and they just keep scrolling, and how novel of an idea that is. And sometimes you do have to remember that. We do, but Kev, you said it, we are passionate about this franchise and we love talking about it. We love discussing it, but sometimes that discussion, depending on what your personality is, can get heated. Sometimes people don't have the nuance of discussion through, texts or Twitter. And it can get a little dicey when people start, misinterpreting things or, going outside that box. And it's just, it's a difficult thing to navigate sometimes. And I know, everybody's got a different opinion about what they like, what they don't like, how they deal with those statements. But I think we all have to remember as fans that, somewhere someone out there likes what you don't like, and that should be okay. You should just accept that. Don't tell any other person not to like something because you wouldn't want that to be done to you. And a lot of times, we have to kind of also understand that if you cannot say what you're going to tweet to somebody in front of their face, then you shouldn't be hitting that send button because a lot of times, and my Brad has, talked about the keyboard warriors that exist out there, that are, it's easy to kind of, pull that chain when you're sitting behind a keyboard at home, and not in front of that guy who may or may not punch you in the face for that.
Yeah, I think at this point we're getting into some deep territory here, in the sense that I think when it comes to people not being able to process that someone else doesn't like something that they adore, or vice versa, I think it's like an issue of empathy, right? And I think that empathy as a practice is definitely been tested in 2020 and maybe even in the last few decades.
Sure.
And it's difficult to feel empathy for something that you vehemently disagree with, right? If you feel empathetic towards a person that has different opinions, you're not validating those opinions that you disagree with. And that's there seems to be a difficulty in engaging in empathetic behavior and separating the fact that you can acknowledge something that you don't agree with, and you don't have to invalidate that person's view. And as far as like the keyboard warrior thing goes, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. If you're going to tweet something that it wouldn't conceivably come out of your mouth, then you're being inauthentic, you're being fake. And if that's what you want to use the internet for, to portray a certain personality that's not yours, that's your prerogative. But it falls apart real quick. It falls apart real quick because like if you're one of those keyboard warriors that everything has to be an escalation, you know what I mean? Then you're not gaining any good fans. And anyone that does follow that, you probably don't want to associate yourself with those people anyway. And that's kind of how those toxic little corners start to develop. It's a weird territory to navigate through. I think some of the best ways to navigate from it are like what Justice does, back away from it every once in a while. One of those like control, it's like a stoic philosophy, right? Like control what you can control. Don't worry about the things you can't.
Sure. I mean, the key word is empathy. I mean, Lauren is saying it here. We wouldn't all feel the way we feel about Star Wars if we didn't want it to succeed and be the best that it can be. But
True.
at the same time, the best is subjective to each person. I think The Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars film that has ever been made. You may not agree with that. You may not agree with that, and that's fine. But it's interesting. I think, in today's society, empathy really has taken a back seat. And, I'm older than you guys. I've gone through some shit, and you have to remember what's important. I kind of look through Twitter sometimes and I see the dumpster fire that you guys talk about. I see it all the time, and I see it between fans and between accounts. And, it's, I can't control what other people say to each other, and I'm not going to, because we're all adults. But at the same time, I look at it and I'm like, okay, that's uncalled for, or this is funny, or why don't you just let that go, or why can't you just enjoy what you enjoy and let him enjoy what he enjoys? There are definitely some scenarios where, I roll my eyes and I'm like, come on, guys, just stop. Twitter is one of those things where, unfortunately, it's like a fight to be the last guy who's right.
Yeah.
And it never stops.
Yeah.
It never stops.
No, and it's there's a component to it of it's in these types of arguments, like it's hard to be right when, like, there's certain things that aren't fundamentally agreed upon, right? Because something you see very commonly now with the abundance of information we have on the internet is you can find things out there that will validate what you already believe. And that's true of, you want to find behind the scenes information about what it was really like at the behind the scenes of Rise of Skywalker or Last Jedi. You can find any little bit of information that, whether it's accurate or not, it's going to reinforce what you believe. Therefore, you are going to take it as, gospel. So when you're having these discussions, the playing field isn't necessarily level, because there's not an agreed upon set of objective truths, and I don't necessarily know the remedy of that right now, because you see it in this. It's like a microcosm of things that happen all over the place with that same fundamental issue. So that's just my observation of it. I mean, I don't really know what the solution is to that.
What do you think of Cam Ray's question here? Do we think that's a generational problem?
What do you think, Justice?
Oh man, I don't know. I don't know if it's a generational thing or if it's just like a learned thing where it's the idea that you can't, like, if you don't agree with how I agree, then we can't be friends.
Yeah.
That, like, I feel like that's something that's been fostering over I guess yeah, maybe it is a generational thing. But also I could see it definitely happening. Maybe it's just like exasperated because it's with the internet, whereas before that we didn't have that technology to enhance that, make that more than what it is. So you just kind of
Right.
see it happening more because we have Twitter, because we have, like you were saying earlier, like receipts where people can go back and they can find this stuff that was said, and there's just like this added to it because of the technology that we have.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to that. I think there's also something to, like, you know, maybe this is just me, but I've always kind of taken an interest in learning how to argue, learning how to debate, or learning how to discern what is objective from what is subjective. And the thing that has allowed me to do that is nothing that I picked up in school. It was taking it upon myself to read philosophy, right? Reading through philosophy, you start to figure out, the tenets that make up moral character, or ethical actions, and even how to think logically. Thinking logically and critically is a learned skill. It's not innate. And this is what I see when I see some of these arguments and disagreements that come up on the Twitter feed. Is like, there's some fundamentally illogical arguments here, and I'm thinking, well, maybe if there was a generational emphasis on understanding logic and critical thinking and philosophy, maybe we would be able to avoid these problems. But I mean, that's like wild speculation.
Cam, you're saying that you grew up with that, but wouldn't you say also like you had to learn that from your parents who were teaching you that, so, or were fostering that instant gratification, so it would come back from the past generation? If that makes sense?
I'll put that up so you people know what we're talking about. So Cam says,
Yeah.
I grew up without instant
Oh,
gratification.
sorry, without.
Now
I misread
everyone
that.
expects what they want when they want it.
My
Yeah,
bad.
I mean, it's it definitely is a thing of instant gratification when it comes to the internet, when it comes to, I don't know, decimating ideology through the internet and through these little microphones that we have.
Yeah.
I think ego plays a big part of it. We've got a camera in front of us, we've got a microphone. We think that people are listening to our word as gospel, and we want to, get it out there. But empathy and humility, I think, should be a big part of anyone. I think really with an ear that might be influenced by a listener.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's also our responsibility as podcasters, right? Is to present ourselves authentically. It doesn't do anyone any good to present like an idealized version of yourself. Just be you, and it's an interesting thing. Cam pointing out instant gratification really got my brain turning, in the sense that, this level of instant gratification is a relatively new phenomena with the human race, and the implications of that, who knows? I mean, this is maybe over the last 20 years, we've been able to just pull up anything at our instant whim. That's
I got it. We got it right. We got it right here. All the answers are right here.
Exactly. You're carrying a supercomputer in your pocket. You know what I mean? The entirety of the world's knowledge is at your fingertips.
Is that what's in your pocket?
Yes. I am actually, in fact, part Android. Absolutely. I wish. If I was part Terminator, my life would be a whole lot better.
Amen.
Yeah. Because I also wouldn't be like 5'7" and, ugly. I'd probably be like 6'3" and Austrian. That'd be cool.
All right, so let's get into the. There's one chat question that I think Amanda was asking, but before that, I'm going to ask you guys because lately, we've had some Twitter talk right after the Daisy Ridley interview that she did. Daisy was talking about the fact that Rey, as a character, they were trying to still kind of figure her out. Is she a Kenobi? Is she a Skywalker? Did she, Palpatine? All that stuff. Let me ask you guys this, real fast, and we'll get into Amanda's question. But do you think Rey's familial lineage matters in the grand scheme of things? Do you mind that she wasn't a Skywalker or a Kenobi? Does it matter? How does that play into your acceptance of the character as we know her now, and how would that have changed if she wasn't a Palpatine?
Go, Justice. You're up.
Oh man.
And I know Lauren's got some ideas on this too. So, Lauren, listen up.
So I guess so when I saw the whatever the 10-second clip of what Daisy said, and was not shocked by it, just because we know how things were going with Star Wars, that they were like with having different writers, there's different, like they were kind of going in different directions. So that being said, I don't really think it changes the story from her interview, from her perspective. I don't think that changes the story. Like what we got told is that she was a Palpatine, she chose to be a Skywalker. Now, do I think her lineage matters? Yeah, I think that's like it's essential to the whole story. I don't know. I liked what they did. Man, I don't know. I don't want to make a lot of people upset by what I say.
You know what though? Speak your mind, speak it intelligently, and that is all we can portray as podcasters. We got to be honest with ourselves. Remember, doesn't matter if you think you're going to piss somebody off, you are going to anyways. Just be yourself.
All right. So when I walked out of TLJ, I was really excited that they kind of went with a Empire Strikes Back and made her a nobody. And I thought that was a really cool concept. I thought that it was a cool tie back. And then when Rise of Skywalker came out, I wasn't shocked that she was a Palpatine. It made sense. If she had been Kenobi or Palpatine, it could have gone either way. It didn't really bother me. The one thing that I was confused was that she chose to be a Skywalker. I thought it was kind of random. But I don't know. I don't know if I'm sorry, I'm not articulating my words very well. To me, like, I'm not the biggest fan of the sequel trilogy, and so what happens in the sequel trilogy happened, and I'm like it doesn't bother me which way or what not, whether she's a Palpatine, a Kenobi, a Skywalker, a nobody. Like the story's been told, and I'm just gonna accept it for what it is, if that makes sense.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense.
So does her familial lineage matter? Yes. Star Wars, the Skywalker saga is all about bloodlines. It's all about familial ties. So yes, it matters because that's consistent within the prequel trilogy, the original trilogy, and the sequel trilogy. It's all about bloodlines. It's all about family. So yeah, it does matter what those ties are and how that decision was come to between the writers and producers and all that. That doesn't matter, right? I personally liked the Palpatine angle, because Palpatine as a character is always obsessed with bloodlines. He's always obsessed with bloodlines. And for Rey to be the antithesis of that and say, my blood lineage doesn't matter, it's the family I choose, that's an interesting angle to take on a sequel trilogy in a saga that's all about family ties. Separating what Daisy Ridley said about it between, the reality of what it is to make a film and the desires of individual fans and how they wanted it to go, that's trickier, right? Because, again, Daisy's experience was used to validate either end's perceptions and their narratives, right? And what Justice and I ended up talking about was like, man, this is just how movies are made, right? They're made in a more haphazard fashion than you think they are. And maybe I think people are so maybe used to the kind of MCU style where it's like it's obviously incredibly planned out and detailed, and it's kind of, you fill in the gaps, right? Like all the bullet points are made, you just fill in the gaps. Whereas the sequel trilogy was not that way. It was not pre-planned. It was, Lawrence Kasdan and J.J. Abrams got a swing at one, Rian Johnson got a swing at the other, took the bat, then J.J. and Chris Terrio came in. It's normal for movies to do like this. Even George Lucas was doing massive rewrites to Star Wars during the original trilogy, and I'm sure he did massive rewrites to the prequel trilogy. It is what it is. It's just making movies. And Daisy Ridley was just relaying that experience, from the perspective of someone who's like, oh yeah, that was my job for X amount of years. That was just me going to work. That's kind of what I took away from it.
All right. So a couple things from what you guys said. So for me, I also am not too crazy with the sequel trilogy. It's my least favorite sequel trilogy. Although I really enjoyed The Force Awakens. It was a great kind of throwback to trying to get that feeling back. Not knowing what we were going to get in The Last Jedi or The Rise of Skywalker. For me, it was a really great experience. I understand how movies are made, although there is quite a big difference between how the sequel trilogy was made and the original trilogy was made. And
sure.
If you're reasonable, you know what those differences are. So I'm not going to spend time, hashing that out. Am I upset that Rey turned out to be a Palpatine, or even in The Last Jedi was introduced as a nobody and brought sort of a democratization of force powers? No, I think it's an interesting idea, but like you said, Kev, in the grander scheme of things, in a Skywalker saga story, I think that decision probably would have been a little better if somehow she was related to a Skywalker. It would have been interesting if she was a Kenobi, and the Kenobi side of things was the one that actually helped save a Skywalker, namely Ben. But I'm seeing some activity in the chat regarding saying that it's not going to ruin the franchise for me, or I'm not upset about it. I mean, you could be upset if you want to. I mean, I'm upset that I didn't get the story that I wanted. I'm not going to make 20,000 videos a day and hate people on it, but
Yeah.
there definitely could have been some decisions that were made to please a wider audience. And again, we're getting into that whole, the movie making is a business, and Disney, took the mantle. Even if Disney said, you know what, we tried something creatively, it didn't work. I would have more respect for Disney saying that than making it the fault of the fans for why this trilogy didn't work. But it is what it is. We got what we got. I understand. I understand some of these decisions, but it's interesting. Again, Rey's family lineage for me does matter, because if you're going to make a third trilogy on this Skywalker legacy, then somewhere in there, Rey has to be, I don't know, for lack of a better term, has to be part of the Skywalker legacy. And I think more so than just saying, I'll pick the Skywalker last name and that's my legacy, because it's a little bit watered down for me. And then throwing in the fact that Palpatine had a family, that just comes out of left field.
Right.
It was never set up. It was never talked about. It was never hinted at, even in the sequel trilogy. And I think, for me, it would have worked better if Rey was a clone of some sort, or a forgotten sleeper agent,
Yeah.
But, there's, her character still is kind of shrouded in mystery, and not because the storytellers shrouded her in mystery. I think it's because the storytellers really didn't think this all the way through, if that makes sense.
Go ahead, Justice.
I just personally think that bringing back Palpatine was the bigger issue, because it kind of ruined Darth Vader's redemption arc.
Wait, say that again. Say that again.
Bringing back Palpatine ruined Darth Vader's redemption arc, and so that's like, so I think that if they hadn't brought back Palpatine, they wouldn't have messed with, like, that wouldn't have been one of, like, Rey's heritage. So I think that kind of goes all the way back to, that's where the issue starts. I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes and no. I can see both points. I think bringing Palpatine back, I can see how you can say that it ruins his redemption. But then again, his redemption had to do with him as the father of Luke Skywalker and not the apprentice of Palpatine. So
Yeah.
I think I can accept that a little more.
Yeah. I mean, personally, bringing Palpatine back, to me, it did make sense in the sense that, like, he was the big bad from the prequels. He was the big bad in the OT, even though we didn't know about it until Empire. It would make sense that he would still be the big bad, At least that it in my brain, it was like, yeah, that tracks. Okay, I got that. But I can definitely see people's perspective on this. Like, it's kind of lazy, right? You could have come up with a different angle on it, and going back to Palpatine was like, I can see that angle, absolutely. I mean, like, my biggest criticism of Rise of Skywalker was that it moved so fast.
Hmm.
And as a film, if they'd have just taken hey, just take 45 more minutes and let the film breathe a little bit. You know what I mean? Let it breathe. Because then they would have had time to set up some of the things that they just kind of hurled at you real fast and said, here's a fact,
Like in the first 10 minutes, you find out like Snoke was Palpatine, and then like you don't even have time to process that, and then they already moving on to the next thing, and it's just there's a lot.
But for me, what ended up kind of like, because that was always my first criticism, was like, yeah, I like it, I do, it's working for me, but it's moving so fast, like it's so breakneck that it literally doesn't slow down until the middle of the movie, and then it starts to breathe a little bit. And if you think about it, the second half of that movie is the strongest part of it because it takes the time to breathe. And I was thinking, with Rise of Skywalker, you're ending a 40-year saga and you're going to do it in 2.5 hours. Come on. I mean,
that's the issue too. I mean, the breakneck speed of the Rise of Skywalker, again, I'm beating a dead horse, but I think, The Last Jedi was written before The Force Awakens was finished and came out. I mean, it's these three films are arguing with each other, and that is it's so evident that they're arguing with each other, and there's no flow, there's no cohesive elements. And if you take out The Last Jedi and you put The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker kind of together, I mean, you can kind of see where JJ was going with some of the ideas that he had, or at least presented in The Force Awakens. And obviously, because The Force Awakens wasn't done yet, Rian Johnson had no clue. I mean, JJ was produced The Last Jedi, and I'm sure there was communication back and forth. But
of course,
I don't know. It's frustrating. It's frustrating. We got what we got, but I mean,
could it have benefited from a singular vision? Yeah, if I had my druthers, I would have immediately turned to Dave Filoni and said, I've gone to him. If you can do episodes 7 through 9, what would you do? I mean, this is the guy that worked the closest with George Lucas. I mean, Dave Filoni is the heir apparent to what Star Wars is. I mean, the guy knows it like the back of his hand, and he's got one foot in the business side of things. He knows how the sausage is made, but he's got another very large foot in the fan area. So he's that entity that straddles that line.
Yeah.
So it could have benefited from that. It could have, but them's the breaks.
Yeah, and Lauren, I see your comment. I would push back here. I'll put it up. And I totally agree with you. I mean, again, these people are, for lack of a better term, they're in the same building, working on the same project. So I know there's been communication. There was communication between the two. JJ obviously EP'd The Last Jedi, and a lot of times that executive producer credit is hands off, and it's only credit in name. Because obviously he was still finishing The Force Awakens, and it's not like he really had firsthand experience, putting The Last Jedi together. That was Rian Johnson's job. But for whatever reason, I mean, he decided to, if JJ told him anything, he just decided to, you know, I'm gonna present the story in a different way, and then we'll see what happens. But again, you know, it's um, it's an interesting way to do a trilogy. Let me just
Yeah,
say that it's again, if Disney said came out tomorrow and said we tried something narratively speaking and it didn't work as best as we thought it would, I would have a lot more respect for them as a company. But again, you know, we may all be wrong, and the sequel trilogy might be the best thing since sliced bread, and we don't know what we're talking about. So that
I
could
mean,
also be a possibility.
it's going to be the same thing with what happened with the prequel trilogy. The kids that grew up watching this are going to love it, and then they're going to be the ones that are going to be like the prequel fans now, where they're trying to show that the prequels actually have some validity, where they're going to be like that, showing that the sequels have validity as well.
agreed. I couldn't agree more with that sentiment because that's, you know, and then we also, you know, a lot of people are reacting to what they feel right now, right? There's nothing saying that 5 years down the road you might revisit this trilogy with, you know, eyes that are a little older and have a different perspective on things, and you might look at it entirely different. You know what I mean? I like it now, but 5 years from now I could pop in Rise of Skywalker and be like, this is crap. You know, you never know. You never know. It's not likely with me. Likely, I mean, likely I'll dig it 5 years from now like I dig it now. But, you know, you never know. You never know. And then you might even run into somebody whose opinion of it or their angle on it completely switches your angle around. You know, think about what Dave Filoni did in the behind the scenes of the Mandalorian thing, where he was just explaining the Duel of the Fates. I mean, imagine if somebody dropped something like that on you concerning the Rise of Skywalker.
Sure. It will be an interesting thing. I don't have a crystal ball, but I think for me, you know, the sequel trilogy is kind of a weird thing for me. You know, again, great experience with The Force Awakens, not so great with The Last Jedi. I saw it twice in the theater. I probably can't watch it again for several reasons. The Rise of Skywalker was good, but it for me again it doesn't have a rewatchability factor like
Yeah.
even the prequel trilogy does, and I don't know why that is. I think you know, is it because I miss the older characters? That's part of it. I just don't. I don't think my view of the sequel trilogy is going to change in 5 years. Let's just say that.
Yeah. And look, if it didn't resonate with you, it just didn't do it. I mean, it happens. It happens. You know, like I absolutely love the Terminator franchise, but I have to hate watch my way through T3. Okay? I have to hate watch my way through that. And the only reason I watched that movie is because I like the ending. The ending took a nice turn. I dig that. Everything else about it, like just you know. So I think all of us are going to have moments like that in franchises we like. Another good example, I love the first two Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies. The third one pisses me off to no end. Why is there time travel? Why was that a thing? You know what I mean?
The Michael
Yeah,
Bay
yeah.
films.
Yeah.
Huh?
Are you talking about the Michael Bay films?
No, the older ones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in the third one, they traveled back in time to feudal Japan because, of course, like, why wouldn't they? You know, and the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle film from like what 89. I mean, that thing is perfect. It was dark and gritty before dark and gritty was even a thing.
That's
Again,
funny.
hard tangent into the Turtleverse. Sorry.
So, Amanda had a question regarding what our thoughts are on Mandalorian Season 2, now that we got some great images. And, you know, obviously everybody's looking forward to more Baby Yoda, more Mandalorian, more Grief Karga. And what are your thoughts on the Mandalorian Season 2? I know, you know, now that we've got the first look in the Entertainment Weekly, hoping that we get a trailer soon. That would be really nice, or even a tease to a trailer, just like what we got during Rogue One. We got that one shot of the Death Trooper with something on fire behind him, and that was it. So it would be really nice to see some images other than the other than the pictures and the posters. But I'm very excited. What do you guys think?
Go for it,
The
Justice. Go.
the first thing that I noticed in the pictures was that Carl Weathers had a
Yeah.
beard that was gray, and so I'm wondering if there's like a significant time gap or whatnot, or just like how long or like how big is the gap between season 1 and season 2. Um, and then I'm also
Yoda doesn't look, the child doesn't look too much changed.
right. So
No.
there probably isn't a huge one, um, but the having Mando and Yoda, Baby Yoda, standing next to each other, I love that picture. I think it was super cool.
Yeah.
So I'm just excited to see the adventure that they go on. Um, I'm excited to see if they kind of explain how the Empire has the dark saber. Yep, I am so looking forward to that. That was the best reveal that they had at the end, like end of that episode.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I'm super hyped for that. I'm just excited to see what kind of adventures they take us on.
Yeah. The thing that I'm probably the most stoked on is that, again, and I'm gonna ride Filoni's balls here for a little bit, but any show that he's been involved in since Rebels, and Rebels is a perfect example of this. Season 1 is very self-contained, right? It's you get a little glimpses of the larger universe, but it's very self-contained. Every season 1 that he does is about establishing your characters, right? And then by season 2, they blow it up. I mean, and they expand crazy. I mean, think about season 2 of Rebels. Vader, the Emperor came back, more Inquisitors, Maul, Ahsoka was back, all of that. And it just, if that is any indication of what we're getting, then this whole idea of a connected universe starts with this season. I think that's, if the trend is to be believed, then this season is going to be bananas, like just absolute bananas. And I'm here for that because
Did we lose him?
I think we lost him, but yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
do.
There
back.
definitely will be some surprises. Justice, what were you going to say?
I was just say that like the fact that we know that potentially Ahsoka's going to be there, and we're going to have Boba Fett, seeing, where he's been for the past however many years it's been, and just the little bits and pieces that they've given us along the way. I'm excited to see what what are they going to plan on doing, like you said, because Dave Filoni does this really good thing where after the first season, it just kind of explodes into this awesomeness. So that's what I'm hoping for in this upcoming season.
I want to ask you guys, and I'll ask you guys in the chat as well. So, we've got this story about this child and this Mandalorian bounty hunter, etc., that takes place a couple of years after Return of the Jedi. We've seen some very familiar places and characters and things like that. It happens before the sequel trilogy, and obviously there has been some stories within this time frame in the expanded universe and things like that, but nothing really within canon. Where do you guys see, or how does the child, or the child's, I guess, his ending point, where do you guys see that fitting in the overall scheme of things, especially how it relates to the sequel trilogy? Is there anything in the sequel trilogy as far as clues that could help us determine where this story might end up?
The first thing that comes to my mind is that this is a really dark thought, but Yoda, the people of Yoda have a very long lifespan, and so maybe somehow Palpatine gets his hands on it, and that's how he's able to keep on, his clones and able to live for such a long period of time after death. I don't know. That's a thought.
Yeah, I mean, from season 1, that's the first connection I made with the Empire's interest in the child was, to serve Palpatine's goals of reanimating his body and sustaining it. And that is a possible angle. I also, in my head, I was thinking, well, the child is obviously going to have something to do with Ahsoka. Ahsoka's clearly going to have an interest in the child. I at this time 8 years. I think it's 8 years after Return of the Jedi. Luke is still off about searching for Jedi secrets and trying to put together their history. So I don't think that we're going to interact with Luke Skywalker. The child conceivably,
but you know what? Luke Skywalker is interacting with us, so that's a good sign. Check out.
Oh man, we made it! We made it, guys. That's it. That's it. We're good.
Done.
We're exalted ones.
Great success, everybody.
Thank you, Master Skywalker.
But I think the child could conceivably been on Luke's Jedi training temple, and maybe he survived. Maybe he survived that. I don't know. That would be really interesting. Or maybe Ahsoka takes the child off somewhere, and maybe that's a thread they connect later. If they do any ancillary material that deals with Rey after the events of Rise of Skywalker, maybe the child comes into play there. Who knows?
Do we get to go find the planet of Yodas and see them all jumping around and having fun?
That'd be cool. Yeah. Lauren says, I think the child ends up with his people. And, but to what end? It's obviously we want this universe to be connected somehow. And so far, obviously it has been for the most part, but it would really be cool. And again, this story could be a story on its own. But there's so much, there's so much marketing and there's so much excitement over this aspect of Star Wars between the Mandalorian and the child and the relationship there, within that dynamic that, it would be kind of weird to just have this story just stand on its own and not affect anything else that we know of. But that's just me. And I'm perfectly fine with just kind of experiencing this story and see where it goes.
Right.
But I think it would be, even more cool to see how it overlaps with things that we already know, because as we know, as Star Wars gets older and older and older, there are many aspects of this story and character and universe that, keep being either reintroduced or reworked to maybe take a look at the original trilogy in kind of a different way with different eyes based on new information that we get. So that's kind of the, without obviously altering the deal as Darth Vader says, but it's something that I kind of like when they do. And I think Dave Filoni has done an incredible job doing that with his work, his writing work in Rebels and Clone Wars. Now that all of that is out.
So let me ask you guys this question.
Baby Yoda holding the dark saber.
Ooh, give it to me. Give it to me. But let me ask you guys this question. When the Mando is tasked with finding his people, what are his people? People of his species or Force users?
I think that is the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, because the armorer knew that he was Force sensitive. She was aware of Jedi, right? So when she said find his people, I don't know.
Yeah, and actually, she could be referring to find his species or find his people, the other Jedi.
Yeah.
Who may be in hiding. So, yeah, that would be kind of cool.
Right.
I think it'd be like, which one's harder to find, his species or a Jedi at that point? Because there's...
Yeah. Well, I mean, we do know at this point that presumably Ahsoka and Sabine were out there looking for Ezra. So they're on the roam. They are on the roam. And it would not surprise me one bit if that's how Ahsoka is introduced into this season. And, that introduction of Ahsoka with the Mando and the child, I mean, she's going to know it's Force sensitive. I mean, she's going to freak out. It's like, imagine it just, Ahsoka just sees miniature Yoda, like, she's going to flip.
And I've always said it on the podcast when I talk to Brad or Alex. As far as Ahsoka goes, if she does pop into this series, I think she's going to be a hologram during the last and final shot of the last episode, leaving us with an amazing cliffhanger to wait and speculate as far as seeing Ahsoka there. Very, kind of very similar to when we first saw her back in the Siege of Mandalore, the little tease, where she kind of turns around and talks to Anakin. But
Yeah.
I think that'd be kind of cool.
Does
Be-
in the course of the Mandalorian, does Dave Filoni bring back Ezra?
He could.
he
And
could.
that'd be cool. I mean, you don't send Ezra and Thrawn off into the void just cuz, right? Like Filoni never leaves threads that he doesn't pull at a later date. You
Right.
know what I mean? So, I personally would love to see live action Thrawn and Ezra. I mean, find some way to shoehorn that one in there. And if someone can do it and make it work um, on a narrative basis, it's Dave Filoni. He'll pull it off. That's kind of the thing with this season. We just like with the first season, we had no idea what their angle was, and we clearly have no idea what their angle is with this one. You know what I mean? Like all the stuff they're giving us in the Entertainment Weekly stuff is just basic set photos, right? It's
Sure.
like get hyped, guys. It gives away nothing, you know.
And one thing, you talked about Dave Filoni pulling on strings. We just don't know where the strings are going to be pulled from. Are they going to be pulled from, another live action series that deals with that story? Is he pulling it, here on season 2 of The Mandalorian? We don't know where it's going to end up.
Yeah. And this is again, goes back to that report of they're doing a connected set of shows. All of these shows kind of relate to each other in some way. So like, for example, it wouldn't surprise me if in the Cassian Andor series, why wouldn't you drop Moff Gideon in that? Why wouldn't you have something for him to do in that just to connect these things further? So that is an interesting aspect to think about where the season could go if they're using this season to kick off that kind of connected universe idea of shows. I mean, it's going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah. What do you guys think of, we hear that there's all sorts of actors and cameos coming in, besides Ahsoka and besides the folks that we already know of. Do you feel that Mandalorian Season 2 needs any special help from characters that may have been introduced in the original trilogy or anyone that we know? Do we see Boba Fett coming in and kind of teaming up with Mando to or becoming an adversary? Do we even see another bounty hunter like Boba Fett coming in who may be familiar? I mean, we've seen Trandoshans in this series. We've seen, IG droids. Are we going to maybe see somebody from The Empire Strikes Back coming back as part of the guild?
I don't know what episode it is, but it's the one where Mando goes with the wannabe bounty hunter, and then the one girl dies. I'm sorry for the lack of knowledge that I have right now, but we don't know who kills her, and there's like the boots. So I'm wondering if that character will be introduced, and I'm wondering if they're going to use that as Boba Fett.
It could.
That was the rumor. I mean, people were examining the jingle jangle sound effects between that shot and The Empire Strikes Back. A lot of fans with a lot of time on their hands, I guess.
Yeah,
But,
I think that Boba Fett could work. He could work. I think that there's kind of been a reticence since the Disney era to mess with Boba Fett too much because, he's a character similar to Yoda in the sense that the more mystery you have about him, kind of the better,
yeah.
But if they're going to use him, yeah, on one level, it's absolute fan service. It's like, hey guys, this action figure that you love so much, there you go. There's that. But you could use him as an interesting antagonist to the Mando. You could, especially if, I don't know. I mean, especially if Boba Fett has a thing against force sensitive people now, considering, one of them inadvertently sent him into a Sarlacc pit, I mean, that could be interesting. And plus, if you have to have someone that Moff Gideon sends after the child, who's scarier than Boba Fett? Dengar? Like I send Dengar after him?
Right. Yeah.
I don't think they need to introduce any of the OT, like the main cast, or
Agreed.
like it would have to be just like side characters. Like I don't think it would I don't think the Mandalorian needs any of these big names in the show. The show's already big enough with Baby Yoda. Let's him soak up all the screen, and
Yeah. That's
I
a
would,
good point, and that's what we talked about. If you bring Ahsoka in, then all of a sudden it turns into an Ahsoka Tano show, and the Mandalorian kind of gets pushed to the back because Ahsoka Tano is a highly popular character, and if you do bring her into live action, she really has to. She's got that burden that her makeup, her prosthetics, her CGI, or her however they're going to do it, it's got to look good. It can't look all wishy-washy. There's a lot of people that cosplay her. Some of them look okay, some of them look not so okay. So I think from a special effects standpoint, I think that balance has to be well thought out and planned and tested in order for a character like Ahsoka Tano to work as a live action character.
did you not like the Twi'leks in Mando?
No, I did. But Ahsoka is, a generic Twi'lek is familiar, is a familiar thing. It's a Twi'lek. But Ahsoka Tano, she's got a very specific look, a very specific mannerism that if you don't get her right, there'll be riots in the streets.
yeah, I don't envy Rosario Dawson. If she is indeed casted as Ahsoka Tano, I don't envy her at all. You know, um, that's a hell of a role to take on because
Sure.
you've got to go up against years of writing with that character, and Ashley Eckstein owns that character very much in the same way as the original voice actress of Harley Quinn owns that character. So if anyone could do it, it would be Rosario Dawson. And I think that the most likely scenario is like what Rose said. We get a small cameo at the end, sets up something bigger. And, it wouldn't surprise me at all at that point if that's the route they take, that, soon after Mando season 2 is done, we get the announcement that the Ahsoka show is in production. And that's one of the next one that drops. Because if you're going to drop Ahsoka in there as like a cameo at the very end or like a little, hey, do, you would give her a whole series to set up where she is. So that way, by the time season 3 comes on, it's not the Ahsoka show. It's still the Mandalorian, but now you've got this character that you know where she's been, you know her story, and it's less about figuring out where was Ahsoka. Make sense?
Yeah. And Lauren said it in the chat. It's I guess it's a story as far as Ahsoka and Sabine going out to the unknown regions and finding the two characters that were lost. It's something that I think I agree with Lauren that I would really like to kind of have that be kept up as an animated show, because obviously we're used to that. There are no chances to take. So I think, if again, Kev, to use your analogy, if Dave Filoni pulls on that string, I would love it for it to continue as an animated show, just to kind of, we've got that familiarity. We've got that, we know these characters the way they look. And, why challenge yourself? Well, I guess, I think I've had one too many, but I was going to say, why challenge yourself with something like that? But, Star Wars has always been about challenging, storytelling and technology. So I think I take that statement back. But we'll see what we get. Star Wars is far from dead, as some fans might say, but it's something that's very exciting to, it's I lived through a time when there was no Star Wars. Even the original trilogy, there was nothing that you can do for at least 3 years in between Star Wars films. And I know a lot of young people can't fathom that, can't imagine not having social media, not talking about, their favorite franchise until the movie came out and you talked about it after you saw it in the movie theater. That's kind of a crazy concept, but I lived through that.
Think about this. It was a year ago that season 1 of The Mandalorian premiered. A year. And they went immediately into production on season 2. And they finished it within a few months, right? Like, this stuff is coming at us so fast, right? We are want for nothing. We don't have to sit here and wait for 3 years between these movies like you did. Even with the prequels, you had to wait for 3 years.
Yeah.
So we're going to get season 2. It'll be done before the end of the year. And then we're going to read that, oh yeah, season 3 is in production. And then they were doing this and they're doing that and they're doing that. And, even Dave Filoni, I don't see him not going back to some kind of animated show at some point. That's his bread and butter, then. That's where he comes from. And I think the more I think about it, the Thrawn and Ezra animated series, like as a sequel to Rebels, would be pretty cool. Would
And
be
I also
pretty
think
cool.
that having the experience of doing The Mandalorian will just enhance his animation.
Absolutely.
Will give him such a help him have that even more rich way of storytelling. Not that he doesn't
Absolutely.
already have that, but like just the adding that nuance of being able to do The Mandalorian will, I think, enhance that.
Well, yeah. I mean, the dude gets better with everything he does, right? Like every season of the Clone Wars was progressively better than the last, right? Every one of them. Every season of Rebels was progressively better than the last one. This is a guy that, like, once he gets momentum going, it gets awesome. Like he gets to be firing on all cylinders, man. So I think he was involved in it. I don't know how heavily he was involved in it.
On which one?
The
Resistance.
No, he spearheaded. He set up the team and set up the studio, but then he backed away.
Yeah, probably because he was starting to work on the Mandalorian and stuff. Resistance is an interesting one. Like, I understand the angle, and I definitely see its value as a kid's show. It's very kid friendly, but it didn't have the weight. It did not have the weight that other Filoni projects have had to it. Like Rebels, by season 3 and 4, there's some weight to that show. It's a kid's show, but man, there's some weight to it. Season 7 of the Clone Wars, man, that's a heavy season.
Yeah, Resistance too is because I saw the entire run with my son, and yes, it's kid friendly. It did get progressively better. There were the storylines were, and again with these shows, they happen over a period of time, and as the audience grows, the show starts to grow with it. And obviously, we saw that in Clone Wars. As we get further into that season, there are a lot of storylines in there that would not work on a a 6 or 7 year old versus 12, 13, 14 year old. So when you strip away a lot of the kid stuff from Resistance, there was some interesting stuff there, especially because it kind of ran concurrent with the events of The Force Awakens. And when those two paths kind of met, when those two things kind of like ran parallel to each other, it was kind of an interesting narrative, between the First Order and finding the I guess the shell of a Starkiller 1.0 type of experiment, and Hux, and some of those storylines.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I definitely appreciate it for what it is. Definitely appreciate it for what it is. And that's kind of the thing, like with Star Wars, if it doesn't hit me in the gut, I'll still appreciate it for what it is. You know what I mean? It's still entertaining. At the end of the day, I watch this stuff to shut this off for a few hours, So yeah, Resistance was still all right by me. Plus, I like dogfighting stuff. I was raised on watching Top Gun with my dad. So you give me dogfights, man, I'm in there.
Totally.
I'm assuming you're excited for that new video game then.
Oh, Squadrons.
Oh, hell yeah. And I'm also excited for Top Gun 2, man. Back into the danger zone.
Yes, definitely. Squadron's going to be awesome, especially, I didn't know they were going to, they were announcing the VR version of Squadrons, and I got my Oculus ready to go, man. That's going to be awesome.
God, me in a VR game would be an absolute hot mess. That'd be a travesty. That'd be terrible.
I managed to pick one up for Vader Immortal because why not? And it was an amazing experience. And we had it in my son's room, and he's got a ceiling fan, and there's one part of that game where you're on a skiff and you're floating over a canyon, and you see some stormtroopers way off in the distance. And as you're moving on this canyon, that ceiling fan is hitting you, and it's almost like 4D because you see you going through a canyon, and you hear that, you feel the wind, whipping at your face, and it was it was a really amazing experience.
Yeah, I went to there was are you guys familiar with Dan Carlin? So he has a podcast called Hardcore History, and he's a journalist, and he had a 5-part series called Blueprint for Armageddon about the First World War. And a few years ago in Austin, he had a VR experience where you go in, you pay your 2 bits, and they put this VR headset and headphones and a pack on you, and then boom, you're on the Western Front in France. And it was like I was amazed at the ability of the VR to completely trick my brain, right? In the sense that you get to look down and you can see the wooden floorboards and stuff, and there was a gap in between a floorboard and another one, and I actually stepped over that gap, and I had to remind myself, that's not there, you idiot. Like it was insane. The only thing that would have made it better is if they would have found a way to work in a smell component, because they did have moments like if a shell hit the trench, they'd blow air at your face, or things like that, and it would mess with you. But I was like, man, if you had a smell component in there, oh, that would sell it.
I went to a con one time, and they had like the Spider-Man VR, and I didn't understand the concept of swinging, so I just jumped off the building, and I freaked out for the first couple seconds because I was just free falling from a really tall building in New York.
Yeah.
But it's funny. It's funny just
welcome to
watching
the
people 'cause they're
Matrix.
just like going like this, and you're like, what are they doing? But like in the game, you're using your web shooters and swinging from skyscrapers, and it's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that's VR gets nuts, man. And then like I say it's going to be a hot mess with me because like I suck at regular video games. Like even these don't work very well with controllers. I don't know what it is, So I can only imagine like the flailing mess that I would be doing any kind of VR stuff.
That's funny. All right, guys. Any last thoughts? Thank you, everybody in the chat. Any last questions for our team here on the Red 5 Live? Anything? Guys, let everybody know where they can find you professionally as far as podcasters go. Kev, you're up.
You guys can find my show, the Force Losers Podcast, on any of the podcasting platforms. And if you really want to make it simple, just go to red5network.com. It's right there. But we're on iTunes and Spotify and Google Play for as long as that's going to be here. We're also on YouTube. You guys can find us on Twitter. It's my domain generally at Force_losers. My intrepid co-host and cohort can be found on Facebook at Force Losers. Yeah, I mean, if you're really into like highly mediocre podcasting, that's your ticket, man. Yeah. I'm terrible at hawking my own stuff, man. I'm awful at it.
It's hard, man.
It is really like no wonder. Like Anchor recently said like we've got an average of 4 listeners. I'm like, yeah, that tracks.
How about you, Justice?
You could find us on Twitter at Powers Podcast, and then you could also go to Anchor and look up Powers Podcast, and you can find us on. And it sends you to Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, Apple. It doesn't really matter. We're on all the stuff. Stitcher. Just go to Anchor and you find out whatever streaming platform you like, and you'll find us.
Excellent. And thank you, everybody in the chat. Lauren, you joke, but that's going to be our next Scare of Scuttlebutt podcast, thoughts on trade routes in a galaxy far, far away. Don't tempt me. I know Brad and I love talking politics on the Scare of Star Wars politics on the Scare of Scuttlebutt podcast. But yes, you can find me talking to my co-host Brad and sometimes Alex over at the Scare of Scuttlebutt podcast. Look for us wherever podcasts are not sold, because we're free and we're gluten-free as well. I'm sure you guys have anybody the dietary restrictions, but for sure, check us out on red5network.com. Let us know what you think, and don't forget to listen to a lot of our other podcast members on Red 5 Network, Red 5, the number 5 network.com. It's a lot of fun things happening over there. We do some blog posts. We sell some merch from our respective members, and we have a lot of fun interact with us on Twitter. Everybody that has been in the chat knows what we do, who we are, and who we do it with. That might be TMI, but I'm okay with that.
I dig it, man. Let's get weird. Let's get weird.
Let's get funky. Thank you very much, everybody. Kev, Justice, and everybody from in the chat. You guys are awesome. Thank you very much for your thoughts. Thank you for joining us tonight. May the force be with you. And that's the Scuttlebutt.